Have you been thinking lately about what it takes to be the church in 2021? How to engage an online audience that we were never trained for? What equipment to have? Do we have what it takes? Do we have the right staff? Do we have the money to be able to buy what we need? Do we already have what we need? How do we get online people to engage the same way that we used to be able to engage with people in person? We should talk about that. Yeah. Welcome back to the Local Worship Project, where we train, equip, and unite the local church. If we're meeting for the first time, my name's Casey Klosek, and I have a passion for uniting the church, for developing leaders and teams in a very biblical and practical way. I truly believe that the church can find a better way of collaborating and cooperating with each other, and this project is all about figuring out the best ways to do that. But for right now, we have a really great conversation coming up with Bruce Colbert. Bruce is a fantastic guy who does a ton of stuff. He has come all the way through the full spectrum of ministration. So he has been a worship pastor all the way to senior pastor, and now he helps out with media at his local church, while he also maintains being part of a pro audio company that helps from consulting to putting a budget together, helping you get a plan for your worship center or a room even, all the way through the installation and even training process. Bruce has just been a gem again in my life, but he can definitely be one in yours. And I'm so excited with our conversation today. I don't want to take any more time. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Basically, what's the church going to be like looking forward in the future in 2021? Let's get to the conversation. So thank you, Bruce, so much for coming on the Local Worship Project here. Really excited to have you. We actually had you come on a while ago, and we had a mess up where my computer just completely crashed. Yeah, glitch. Yeah. Just completely crashed in the middle of our conversation. It was close to the end of our conversation, I think, actually. It was, yeah. So I pulled it back up, and there's just nothing. So that was awesome.
It was great stuff, too. It'll probably be twice as good as anything we're going to do today.
It really was. My heart was just like gone. I was like, man, that was just gold that just lost it. It's like dropping a bar of gold into a volcano.
Yeah.
That was rough. Anyways, well, let's get to this one then. I want to reintroduce you, but for real, just introduce you for the first time to our project here and to all the people who are going to watch this in the present and in the future. Bruce, I've known you for quite a while from Fort Wayne, Indiana, when I used to work over there at Living Grace Community Church and then at Sweetwater for a time. And you do quite a bit out there. You started out in a few different positions. You now do something completely different. Just seems like you're always moving further and further into what God's calling you into. So would you mind taking just a few minutes to explain to us who you are, maybe a little bit about your history, what you've done, and where you've come now, and then just where you currently serve?
Yeah, absolutely. And first, I want to apologize. I'm a tech guy whose audio and video doesn't look or sound too great here. I'm kind of portable in my guest room at the moment. So
I think everybody in COVID is in the same boat.
But no, I actually started in engineering. Electrical engineering is what I went to school for, but felt called into ministry. Actually working in electrical engineering for a few years before I finally kind of gave in to God and was willing to do what He really called me to do. And went into full-time ministry. Took a church down in Terre Haute, Indiana, a small church that was about 35 people when we started. And when I left, it was about 60 people 2.5 years later. And I did everything from, leading the church, preaching every week, to actually doing worship music, because I'd done worship growing up. I've been involved in music all my life. About 2.5 years into that, realized that God was leading me back to my home church, the church I grew up in, and they called and asked if I would be the worship pastor. And I'm not a great performer, but we had some very talented people that just needed a leader for the team, and that I felt very called to do. And so came on staff back at my home church January 1st of 2000. And soon after that, we outgrew our building. We went portable. We were a portable church for 12 years, setting up and tearing down in gyms and YMCAs, full stage, full lighting, 2 video screens, full band, and did that for 12 years. And then eventually was able to build a building on our new property. And during that time, went from worship pastor to executive pastor to about 6 years ago, the lead pastor, who was my best friend, passed away unexpectedly. Took over as lead pastor for about 4 years, and then started going back the other direction. About 3 years ago, felt like God was calling me to help a lot of other churches outside our own with some technology and ministry, figuring out how to put those two things together. And those are the two loves of my life and passions that I have. So actually started backing down from the lead pastor role and became executive pastor again. And Casey, I don't know if I even told you this, but actually, as of the first of the year, I'm going to be just in a tech director role at my church, and we've hired a full-time executive pastor to take over that role so that I can do even more to help other churches and do some more traveling and that type of thing. So, yeah, so I work with a company called CSD, Custom Sound Designs, here in Fort Wayne or New Haven, Indiana, and we go all over the country doing video, audio, lighting, acoustics, any kind of technology. And then I get to work with worship teams and do training for sound techs and video techs and just whatever I can do to help use my passion is using technology to help further the ministry. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing and get to do more of starting the first of the year. So
That's awesome. So tech is going to be like your thing moving forward, and that's helpful for a lot of people who are watching this right now. Right?
I tell you, God moved me into this just at the right time because especially with video and streaming, and we just built a new production suite and onto our church, and we've been going through the learning curve just like everybody else of how are we going to use it, how's the best way to use it, not only from a tech standpoint but from a ministry standpoint, and how do we do ministry online and hybrid and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, learning right along with everybody else.
It's just one of those things, that goes into our next question. I wrote these down because they were awesome last time. Not the questions, but the answers to them. And so I'm hopeful.
Okay. I don't remember what we talked about.
Right.
So.
That's the best way. So the next question that I really have for you was, in this ever increasing technological world that COVID really sped us all towards in a crazy way, how has the church been reacting in your interactions? And a couple of examples with that are like, are they trying to keep learning with each other, in different ways, how to do ministry? Are they investing in new technology, in people to actually support technology in their church? I had a great conversation with somebody just a little bit ago, and I'll have them come on at some point too, about where the church is going with worship in the future. And it was interesting, his thoughts on that. But what have your interactions been like since all this has started?
Yeah, man, we could talk for half an hour about this, but
I think we did.
I think we did. It's all over the spectrum. There are some churches that are, kind of pushing back and fighting it a little bit and saying, this is a temporary thing. We'll put a camera up or something, but we're going to go back to the way we were.
Yeah.
Fully to the other side, where I'll be honest, you're going to see a lot of churches in the next few years have production studios. And I say that not only for, so many churches are thinking first, obviously, about streaming and being online with their services. But there are so many other things that you can do online. And one of the big changes we're making at our church is having to get away from thinking Sunday only.
Yeah.
We're really pushing ourselves to say, let's do ministry all week. And what does that mean? Do we need a space to do video for, devotions, for prayer times, for, just all kinds of different things to hit different pockets of people at different times. And it's not just about Sunday morning anymore. And people, one of the changes in culture is kind of an on-demand culture. And if we can provide ways to disciple and to help people grow, as well as figure out how to translate worship, online, then we want
Yeah.
to use every tool we can to make that happen.
I
So,
guess, I mean, that's one of the things that I've been wrestling with a little bit. How do you get people to translate worship online, and why in the world are we trying to just do the same thing
yeah,
and expect it to have the same reaction with people when it's a completely different platform, completely different medium? How in the world are we actually trying to invest in other
yeah.
people in the way that we're currently going and where we know they're going to be there in the future? What are we doing for that? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the reality, like you said, is that it's not a. I don't think you're going to see a big shift towards only online. There may be a few churches that do that,
Hmm.
but I think it's some kind of hybrid, right? And
Right.
it's kind of the analogy I tend to use with churches is it's really no different than some of the, take the big box stores, for instance, that when apps and stuff came out and the internet first came out, that they
Mm.
were all worried that, well, we can just buy everything on Amazon. There's not going to be any needs for stores. And, what they found out is as they developed their own apps and everything, that people developed loyalty to them. And sometimes working with an app or working online actually brought people into their store more too. And
Mm.
so it's a both and, it's not a one or the other. I would say that if churches don't move towards having some kind of online presence and connection that way,
Yeah.
that they probably will begin to lose touch with younger generations. Um, but I don't see it replacing, the community, and we're not getting rid of Sunday morning services anytime soon.
Right.
Um, I think it's some kind of hybrid where we can have both and, because you can't, even doing this is great. I haven't seen you. You're way far away, but it's still not the same as being in the same room with you.
Yeah.
Um, Now, when it comes to worship, you mentioned that it's a totally different thing, and I think one of the things that we've got to wrestle with, and we don't know the answers to yet. We've tried lots of different things, but I don't know that worshiping while watching a Sunday morning service that has totally been set up for in the room
Hmm.
is the way to engage people in worship. I mean, when you think about it, we're on stages. Why are we on stages? So that people in the back can see us. We're elevated, right?
Right.
Why is the room dark and the lights are on the stage? Is so that people's focus is attention is focused to the stage. And why are we have speakers in the room is so they can hear us in the room. All that is stuff we've morphed into over the years, specifically for the in-room setting.
Mm.
Well, that doesn't necessarily translate to watching it, on your couch on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to think through some different things like, do we do some worship times, sitting on couches and do it acoustically so that when I'm sitting there watching you, I feel like you're in the room with me, not
Right.
you're at
Right.
a concert that, is up there that I'm just, looking at.
Yeah.
We're experimenting with teaching times where we're finding a conversation with two people translates on video much better than a speaker just speaking to a camera.
Hmm.
We're gonna have to try some stuff. We're gonna have to figure out new ways of doing it so that it can translate better through the video medium.
Yeah. I mean, that's completely right. So take this podcast for example. So I've done episodes where it's been solo, right? So when I'm all by
Yeah,
myself, and I've done that for a while, just here and there. And what I've noticed very quickly is I'm a pretty boring person by myself, right? Like there's
yeah,
nothing really that impressive about me when I get up and I'm
yeah.
just talking to the camera, as entertaining as I think I can be about it. Whenever I
Right.
watch it back, whenever I see reactions of people after, it's just I'm boring. And because of that, I started doing this thing where I'm still doing it now. A video actually on the day that we're recording this is going for scripture readings, right? So we're going through the
Yeah,
Psalms for my worship team, and I didn't want to do it by myself because I thought that
yeah,
would be boring for my team.
yeah,
So instead, I'm grabbing a few people that I knew in the past and saying, "Hey, come on, and let's just talk." let's talk about the Bible. And it's just
Exactly.
a night and day difference because of the
Yeah,
way that we're trying to interact and the socialness of being online and the awkwardness that is
absolutely.
not there. I'm not just expecting me to lecture to you and you just to receive it. Instead, we're
Right.
bouncing ideas off each other, and you're kind of part of that. You can comment if you want, but you're more part of the discussion at that point
Exactly.
and less of just receiving something for 40 minutes.
Yeah, very few people are good enough communicators, honestly, to keep your attention for 20 to 30 minutes by
Oh, man.
themselves. And it's incredibly hard. And even those communicators, some of the big names, have teams of people helping them, be
Yeah.
creative and to do things to keep attention. And yeah, we just found that having a conversation is much easier to keep
Yeah.
people's focus and attention than just watching you know. I tried doing online classes once, and it was the same thing. It's like just put a camera on the teacher and listen for a half an hour. 5 minutes into it, you're just like, oh, come on. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how good the
Totally.
content is. It's just the medium doesn't work. The forum doesn't work that way.
So I guess one thing that I'm curious about then is if you in this whole experience so far, because we've had months and months and months of going through this and trying to work things out, what are three of things, and I'm throwing this on you pretty cold here, what are
Okay.
three things that you have discovered through this online method that has helped sharpen your ability to communicate with an online audience? So what are
Okay.
maybe the top three? They could be good or bad.
Yeah, I think first of all, these aren't in priority order, but
Hmm.
technology does matter. Again, like I said, as soon as I saw what I was sitting down here to do to do this, I'm like, oh, this is horrible. I should have had a better camera. I should have had better audio. Um, here's what I tell people when it comes to the technological side. You're never going to wow anybody, right? The
Right.
time of churches wowing people with their technology are way behind us. But tech has to be good enough that it's not distracting.
Hmm.
And so it does take some investment in technology to be able to do things at a quality level that people can take their iPhone now and make videos that are better than what we used to be able to do 10 years ago with high price cameras. Well, if they could do it with their phone, they're kind of expecting that you're going to do it with whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So the technology does matter to a certain extent. It's not going to win you people, but it can't be something that's distracting.
Yeah, and I like that perspective there. So I'm going to interrupt you just for a
Sure.
second because
Yeah.
what you're actually saying there, and I don't want people to miss it, you're saying that the audience can record something in better quality than you're presenting it. Not that you
Absolutely.
have a phone and you can use it to record,
Right.
although you can. Like
Yeah.
that's,
Exactly.
but
No,
it's
thank you
that
for
level.
clarifying that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that level
If
they're expecting of quality
Yes.
because they have it in their pocket.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I mean, they could pick up their phone and listen to with earbuds, that sound better than a lot of times the audio that we're getting putting out there on our YouTube channels,
Right.
that we've, stuck a mic in the room or something and get all this echoey audio. And they're just not going to listen to that.
Yeah.
There have been some studies done recently that, just some of those tech things, whether it's your internet connection being too slow, so you get the hourglass, or the
Mm.
audio drops out. People, 10 seconds into that, you're gonna lose people. There's 30% or something like that. I think you lose with the first time your video buffers, and the second time it happens, 70% of your audience is gone.
Yeah.
So again, it's not that you're going to wow them, but it has to be at a level that isn't a distraction. It's got to
Gotcha.
keep them engaged.
So you need to
Um,
invest in technology to the point that it's not distracting your audience. Is that a good
yes,
summary of point
yes,
one?
exactly.
All right, man. Let's go to
Second
number
thing
two.
is, honestly, what I'm seeing that's going to be a harder thing, I think, because um, I think we're further behind on this, is it's going to take some new volunteers
Mm.
that are going to need to be trained.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have the best tech in the world. If you don't have the people who can run it, it's pointless.
Hmm.
Um, that I think is going to be a learning curve that's going to take a little bit for the church to catch up on, especially when it comes to video. It's going to take some people investing some time and some resources into helping volunteers learn how to use the technology that they do have and how to do it well.
Oh yeah.
And I can tell you from my experience, the first stuff you put out, when I look back at what we put out for, for our Easter service this year, and I'm like embarrassed. I mean, like we've come that far in 6 months, you know.
Right.
But the only way you do it is to keep moving, keep trying stuff, experimenting, and so. But I think that volunteer training is going to be. We're going to have to look for people that we've never engaged before, to be honest,
Yeah.
which is a great opportunity because I think there's people out there who maybe haven't been involved who will really latch on to this.
Yeah.
So that'd be the second thing.
And I'm going to interject there because,
Yeah.
like you said, and I think every church can really speak to this, is that if you look at your one when COVID forced everybody into this space to now,
Yeah.
I mean, you can almost go on every church's YouTube
Yep.
account or Vimeo or whatever they're using and just track that and see the progress and the confidence.
Absolutely.
Even if it's the same style of video, just their confidence in front of the camera is incredible
Yeah.
compared to what it was before.
Yeah.
So that definitely happens. With us personally, we were planning on investing in online presence. So we were debating whether or not we were going to go live stream or pre-record things, give it to shut-ins and things like that,
Yeah.
give them like a key or something like that to watch the video. And then we were just forced into the space and we had to go all in with,
Yeah.
I mean, we were ironically coming home from our retreat as a staff that was setting up our yearly budget, and we just approved it for everything that was not included with video. And so
Wow.
we come back and we're like, oh, well, that didn't work. We got to spend a lot of money on video.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the point that I'm trying to make is that we just got a couple of pan-tilt zoom cameras, 1080p, didn't get anything crazy fancy. We're using vMix as our software. So that wasn't crazy expensive. I think it was like $7.99 for the package that we have. And then we have this amazing guy who his entire life he's done broadcasting, it seems.
Oh, cool.
And so he was just like there, and God just
Yeah.
like put him there.
That's
And
awesome.
he saw it as his mission to really just get us up and going with this. Retired guy who just
That's
had
great.
time and just wanted to do it. And so he got us going, and he just started like pirating everything and making it all happen. And you just
That's
saw the
awesome.
progress over months. The bigger
Yeah.
thing that I noticed over these months is the youth, the new volunteers,
Yes.
the youth who couldn't do anything except for meet together and do these live streams. They ended up having to do it in our worship center with all this new equipment that we bought instead
Gotcha.
of their area, because our space was larger. So they had
Right.
more that could meet when we were allowed 25% capacity. So we found that, I think it was from 2 volunteers who did youth. They're somewhere around like 15, 18 now,
That's
regularly doing volunteer for
That's
tech
awesome.
and worship
Yeah.
team. And it was just incredible to see that. There's like 3 of them who are doing
That's
video,
great.
and they're learning these terrible methods because we didn't set up any curriculum. So that's completely
Yeah.
on us for training them poorly, but it's because we didn't really know what we were doing.
Yeah.
But to your point, investing in that training is going to be huge. And we're turning around and doing that now. We're taking like budget items that we had for calendar year stuff for our worship team, which was like
Yeah.
going to conferences, doing
Yeah.
these team get-togethers. Can't do that. Let's take that money. Let's invest it in training in these areas, and have some
Absolutely.
group up times where we can get together, learn this stuff together, and have excuses for meeting together because now
Yeah.
it's relevant. So that's what
Oh.
we're trying to do to meet a little bit more and train a little bit more, is reinvest what
awesome.
we had already budgeted into that same area. So
No,
yeah,
that's a great
keep going,
idea,
man.
and I love that hearing the youth are involved because you know you're getting them involved in an area that you're speaking their language. I mean, this
Yeah.
is what they're so used to, and honestly, they pick it up so much faster than some of us old people. So
Oh, it's incredible.
yeah, yeah. No, it just fits for them. So that's great to hear.
All right, so we got
Um,
the first one. The first
Yep.
one was that
Tech
the tech has to
can't.
be.
Yep, it's got to be good
important.
enough that it doesn't distract.
And then the second one,
Is you're going to have to find some new volunteers and train them.
you volunteers. And now your third.
Third one is pastors, worship leaders, creative teams. I really do believe you're going to have to spend a lot of hours over months talking about creative ways to use the medium. Um,
Mm.
it's going to look different. And I know there are some pastors, especially, that are struggling with that. They're used to being in a room. I'll tell you, I taught and preached a lot when I was in the lead pastor role, and even before that. Um, it's a lot different to preach to a camera or to talk to a camera. It's one of
Yeah.
the reasons we decided to go to a discussion format instead of talking to a camera. I'm not good on camera. I'm just not. Some people are better at it than others, but you're going to find that you're either going to have to, as the people who are normally in front of people, either develop new skills or, again, find an opportunity to get some other people involved who are better at it. And it's just going to take some time. And I guess I would say be willing to risk, be willing to try some stuff.
Mm.
One of the things this last 6 months that's been nice that I've been telling churches is, man, try things now because there's a lot of grace, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's like, hey, we're in COVID time. Yeah, we know this is all new. It's different. So if you try something and it doesn't work, people are usually like, hey, it's okay. Just, try better next time. So, experiment with things. I don't know of any church right now that says they have the answers and this is how to use the online platform effectively. We're all experimenting,
Mm.
but don't give in to the it's not going to work or it can't be effective.
Yeah.
Um, there are pieces, and I think we're getting pockets now where we're learning different things from different churches about how it can be effective, how we can
Mm.
engage people. So it's not just watching a screen, but we can chat back and forth, or we can have Zoom, or we can do, we're doing our men's group right now is experimenting with a hybrid thing where they have guys that meet at the church at a certain time. They set up a PTZ camera in the room and they have people log on Zoom. And so there's some people there virtually, some people there in the room, and there's
Mm.
interaction both ways.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff, let's not be afraid of it. Let's figure out how we can use it. Our goal is still to help people keep taking next steps in their spiritual life. So,
Mm.
yeah.
So this experimenting factor, I find that there's two different leaderships that I've talked to, um, that I've known and felt the presence of, and through this whole COVID thing, there's one that's pretty much in denial.
Yep.
It's just like super.
Yeah.
We have to get people back into the church, um, and I don't disagree with them. I completely agree that gathering together as a local assembly is a huge part of being a
Right.
church,
Yes.
and honestly, it's what we've made the most of being the church
Right.
since I've grown up. That's what it's
Yep.
been.
Right.
I think that whole movement that started maybe when I was like, I don't know, 15 or something, when like all these people were trying to do like the home churches and stuff, like
Hmm.
it was a huge movement even in my 20s.
Yeah.
um, that was completely on the other side of everything. We're like just trying to
Yeah.
stay away and doing this
Yeah.
whole online space thing. So I've heard people say that we just need to get back into the church, and being online is something where we could just do good enough because that's not what we care
Right.
about. We care about the people who are coming back in the building. And if they're not coming back here, we're not investing our resources into that. We'll just do good enough. We'll throw up a little phone camera and
Right.
call it a day, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one. And there's of course grays, and just different shades of everything going between these two sides.
Hmm.
And then the other side is really extreme that says the church has left the building. And
Right.
with that, it's like this complete get out, stop
Yeah.
focusing at all on that,
Yeah.
and instead focus your attention on the online space because that's where everybody is going to be in the future. We got to learn how to live that well. And so, your response to both those, I guess I'm curious on. Have you felt
Yeah.
that? What have you said to that?
Yeah. Have had a lot of those conversations. I would say online only. Let me speak to that. And first, if that were to occur, I think it's way down the road. And here's what I would say. Um, I'm not saying it won't go there at some point, but the principles of why we gather on Sundays or whenever your church gathers
Hmm.
still apply. If you can figure out a way to worship together effectively, um, disciple people effectively, and share community with each other virtually, then I'm open to listening to that. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're a
Hmm.
long ways from it. Uh, I think it's more about those principles still apply. And so far, I haven't seen, and I don't think culture is to a place as much as we are online and on our phones and everything. I would still say it doesn't replace face to face contact and being in the same room.
Yeah.
Uh, and until or if we get there, I would say then we can't give up meeting together in the physical space either.
That's kind of interesting. So let me just interrupt you for just a second. So there are, you know, how the technology is coming around virtual reality and augmented
Hmm.
reality. And that's kind of where technology is moving, like hardcore moving to the
Yeah, I
point to
mean,
where social networks are being created in VR in
yeah,
ways that we never would have imagined. And I'm not trying to
yeah.
get weird or anything, but
Well, no, that's why I would not go so far as to say you could never have an effective church
yeah,
online only, because there's some technology out there, like you're talking with virtual reality, that may be very similar to being in the room.
yeah,
I don't know. But again, the principle still applies that there has to be a way to feel community, feel
yeah.
like you're a part of it. And if we ever get there, maybe it can be effective.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think we're a ways away from that one.
Are we though?
Now,
So
well,
have you heard about that whole thing with like getting the chip in the head, plugging yourself into a computer deal? I mean, that's being
yeah,
tested.
yeah. Let me put it this way. I guess I think we're a ways away from that being readily available and an
Mm,
acceptable practice. I guess maybe I would
great.
put it that
I hope I'm not
way.
alive when
Yeah,
that's the case.
yeah. Um, so that's that end. The other end I would speak to for those who are just saying, "Hey, we'll just stick the phone. It's good enough. Our people will understand. We're not going to put anything into online." Here's what I would say. Here's the harsh way I would say it.
Hmm.
You've just signed, your death wish, because um, your people who are there now may put up with it. You people who you are trying to reach, especially younger generations, will not.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean they don't like you. They're just not going to find you. I mean, to be honest with you, because nowadays, anybody that's my age, I just turned 50 this year. 50 and younger, or I would say probably 40 and younger,
Yeah.
they're probably not stepping foot in your church without checking you out online first.
Yeah.
And so if you have no online presence at all, and there's not a way, and I don't mean just a website anymore, I mean a way for them to get a feel for who you are,
Yeah.
who your staff is, who your people are, what just I need to feel a little bit about a sense of who you are as a community of people before I'm probably ever stepping foot in your church.
Yeah.
And so if you have none of that, um, they're not.
Hmm.
They've got plenty of other choices to look at on the internet, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they're gonna. I should say, I'm a big believer, and most people will come to church because somebody asked them to, right? So I'm not
Hmm.
saying that there isn't that relational piece also, but so much of our relationships now are intertwined with our online capability and our phones and that's just we go between the physical and the online back and forth constantly now in
Yeah.
our day. That's normal. And so to have a relationship with an organization or a church or a group of people that has no online presence is like becoming abnormal.
Yeah. That's good. I like the fact that you're so thank you for saying they've signed their death warrant and being blunt. So
uh, Sorry.
one of the things that I really appreciate is when people are candid and blunt. And the better
Yeah.
way to say that is they're being transparent, which I think is exactly where you were going with that. So
Yeah.
younger generations, you can make the total argument, especially the ones who are past millennial. What's that generation called? That's after the Z generation or something like
Gen
that?
Z, yeah.
Gen Z. So
Yeah,
Gen Z seems to be working harder towards relationship than the
right.
millennials ever did. So
Yeah,
that
there's
is hopeful
right.
for them coming back
Absolutely.
into the church as a full body. However, I love what you said, which is they're not going to find you because they
Right.
know how to, that's how they're trained how to search for things, you
Yeah,
know?
part of their relationship is the digital, right?
Yeah.
So they thankfully, I'm kind of thankful that they're swinging the pendulum back a little bit where they also want the in-person interaction, which is
Hmm.
great. But that doesn't mean that's without also a digital interaction.
Right.
It's the both and.
And
So
a skillful digital kind of relationship. And I don't mean skillful in the way that consumerism. I mean skillful and we
right.
know how to communicate online effectively. And that could be
Yes.
done with your phone. It can be done with
Absolutely. Yeah.
almost no tech at all because the
Yeah.
content matters way more than anything else.
That's a great point. One thing I would say is that as you're experimenting with different types of online content, it's okay that the technology match the kind of content that you're doing.
Yeah.
It doesn't all have to be professional 3 camera shoots with lights. That may be for something, like your services or something formal. But there's also one of the reasons we do online content is for people to get to know our staff and who we
Right.
are personally, right? And that a lot of times takes the form of us walking around the office with our iPhone, or we started doing these things that we call tubers, which are
Huh.
uh, Uber drives around church Ubers, which is a staff person driving around with their phone recording in their car. And it could be just something like one time my son-in-law is on staff with us, and he's our young adult and online pastor, and he didn't understand what was up with the McRib when it came back. So it was him just going, "I'm going to go try a McRib,
Huh.
and try it, and I'm going to videotape myself." And it's making it personal, and like people will actually feel like they know you
Hmm.
more because you've done that relational stuff. Well, it doesn't have to be done with 2 people in the back with cameras. It can put your iPhone up on your dashboard and
Right.
videotape yourself. So there's lots of ways. Again, really, really, I encourage people, push yourself away from thinking Sunday only.
Hmm.
There's lots of ways to use the video and online presence to connect, to build relationships to a certain level, not in place of uh, meeting, but then also, like I said, to disciple and to do spiritual growth types of things. So
Yeah. Hmm. So I'm trying to remember here. So thank you. That was huge. Those three things, and I
yeah,
definitely put you on the spot for that. Um, but the first
yeah,
one, just to recap, the first one is technology should be something that it's not like the most important thing, but it's not
right,
distracting people. So you want to get technology to that place where it's not distracting.
yeah,
Um, yeah. Then the second one was talking about volunteers. So training new volunteers in new ways that have to do with these new systems and processes and ministry opportunities that we have online,
right,
and the lack of those that we have in person. And when the church comes back, there's going to be less and less of those and more of
right.
the online combination, I should say.
Yep.
And then this third one, how would you sum that up? Because I'm struggling just a little bit.
Be willing to have the conversations with the creativity of being online and risk some things. Experiment, try
Experiment.
things.
Be willing
Yeah,
to risk, be willing to experiment. I like that.
I would say too. One of the other things I always tell people that are working on this is none of this matters if the content you have to put online isn't good.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
it's you don't spend any less time working on the content you put online than you do for a Sunday morning,
Right.
if that makes sense. Now, there are some things like this. Having a conversation actually makes it easier, so you don't feel like you have to have it, all laid out in an outline and
Right.
everything. But the content still has to be worth listening to.
Yeah.
It's not just, we found that out early, I think, when COVID hit. Everybody was kind of running towards the how many likes, how many views, what can we put out there that will catch people's attention. And, I think we all quickly found out if the content isn't worthwhile and isn't helping people, you're just another, resounding gong on the online platform. So,
Yeah, that's so good. And I think so on that note, if you're pursuing relationship with people, whether it's in person or online, that drives your content and your thought towards
exactly.
that, your thoughtfulness, your mindfulness towards people. Because if all I have is a phone to relate to you, then I need to figure out how to relate to you best with a phone.
Exactly.
And just because I grew up knowing how to do that in person all my life does not mean that I can't adapt and figure out how to do that over a
Right.
phone. It may never hit the bar that I want as far as in person, but I can
Right.
do pretty well if I start investing myself into that. And that's where
Yep.
I'm just curious about where the church is going in the future and all that. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yes, it
And
is.
I'm excited to have that one with a lot of people. But thank you for summing up those three for us. I'm curious though. We don't have like crazy amount of time left with you,
Yep.
and I want to get to what you actually do now currently to help the church and how other people can actually benefit from what you do in your local area, and if that has to do anything with people further away from you as well. So tell us about
Yeah.
what you do right now when it comes to consulting, training, things like this. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for time to do that. Yeah, my own little plug here. Like I said, I work with CSD. You can find us at csdus.com. And we work with churches all over the country. We actually have an office in Colorado and one in Texas now, as well as Indiana. Our major thing is still doing installations and designs for audio equipment, video, live streaming, broadcast. We also do acoustic. We have a whole division that does acoustic treatments for buildings. Basically, anything from the performance standpoint at a church in the room or now online. We help design, build, install all of those things. We're dealers for all the major brands and love getting to do that. And it's usually that's kind of what starts something for me is a church will call and say, hey, do you have any recommendations or can you come and check out? We need a new speaker system or we need to upgrade our video.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows me to start having conversations about the future. And I love coming in and kind of doing a, hey, let's dream for the next 2 to 3 years. Where, what do you think you want to be? What next steps do you want to take? And here's some phases that we could do. And then in the process of that, I get to offer training. Do you have audio volunteers? My first love is audio. I love audio and music. And so can I help with training people who are running your mixer? Can I come in on a night when your worship team is practicing and we can work together with your worship team and even get some settings and, do those kinds of things. So we do lots of training, video cameras and stuff like that. How do you run a camera? How do you switch video? And then a lot of it then too is just talking about ministry. I just love doing this kind of stuff. How do
Mm-hmm.
we use technology better for ministry? What are some ideas you're doing? I'm learning from churches. Part of what I love about getting to do this is I get to travel a little bit more. Is I get to hear and see what other churches are trying and doing,
Yeah.
and so we get to do that as well. So lots of stuff. Today I tuned a new speaker system in a gymnasium in the morning, and this afternoon went to a Catholic church and tried to dial in their microphone at their podium. So it's just whatever I can do to help technology wise, help you do what God has called your church to do better is what I want to be a part of.
That's awesome. And I think one of those things, when I hear about a company like that, like CSD and all these other big companies that do installations, one of the things that I'm aware of, just because I got to see a little bit behind the scenes when I worked in sales for pro audio and
Yeah.
stuff,
Hmm.
was that there wasn't a lot of opportunity for the little guy to benefit from that stuff. However, I do know just from relationship with you that that's not the
Yeah.
case with what you do. And that's kind of huge. And that's a game changer in this season. And so when I'm hearing you talk
Yes.
about like acoustical treatment, where my mind used to go with that is, oh man, I got to invest thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into this huge room treatment. Where what I think I hear you saying more of is, hey, I got my office and I need some acoustical treatment in here and best thoughts about how to create a studio for us doing online ministry. And that's an
Yeah.
option as well.
Yeah. Anything from, the church I was at this afternoon is probably 50 people to a church I'm working with right now that's got 3 campuses and is doing a video makeover for broadcast. So I actually started into this because there were a lot of smaller churches in the area who just didn't have the technology expertise, even on the basics.
Hmm.
And so they asked me to come in and start helping. So I have a huge heart for smaller churches and, want to be someone that can come in where if they don't have anybody with that expertise in the church, we can help them. Yeah, anything from, so we do conference rooms,
Yeah.
up to, like I said, multi-campus, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people churches. So anything in between. Again, for me, it is not about, it's fun to work on the big ones.
Yeah.
But my heart is just, what can I do to help you do what God has called you to do? As part of, I tell everybody all the time, CSD stands for Custom Sound Designs because it started mostly in the audio world. But I love that custom is in its name because
Yeah.
first thing I love to do is come out and just hear your story and hear what you're doing as a church. And then I want to see, what can I do to help you do what God has called you to do in the way He's called you to do it.
Yeah.
So it's part of the fun.
And I've always loved your heart too, just knowing that you've had all of this track in your life of just following what God's called you to do and learning so much about just barely being in the ministry to really running the ministry at a smaller church and in larger
Yeah.
contexts and all this stuff. And then being able to use all of that, obviously, where God's called you to have this more personal, custom interaction with people and helping them thrive in their local ministries. It's really cool to see, and we appreciate everything that you're going to
Thank you.
offer. I'm curious, how can people connect with you if they want to take advantage of this opportunity? They want to just see if they
Absolutely.
can have a conversation with consultation or anything like that. That's the best way to reach out.
Absolutely. Easiest way, honestly, is email because I'm in and out a lot. And my email is bruce@csdus.com. So
All
just
right.
my first
We'll
name.
have those below.
Cool. Yeah. And yeah, that's the easiest way. I'll get back to you as soon as I can and would love to connect. Like I said, the more stories of churches and ministries that I can connect with, the more fun I get to have. So
Awesome. Now I'm curious. We're basically done here. Awesome conversation. Thank you so much for
thank you.
doing this again for the
Yeah,
second time.
glad to do it.
And before we run out of luck and it crashes again, I want to get some closing thoughts from you. If you have anything to say, as we're kind of right now, as we're recording this, it's in December. So I don't know if we're going to let this one go. And you know what? We should. You know what we should do? What would you say to people who are going into the new year? And we'll leave off with that because we do have some crazy stuff coming around the corner with restrictions and lockdowns and all this stuff. I'm just curious, as people might be fearing a little bit about what's going to happen next and just a marathon run that the church is in right now. How would you encourage the church going into 2021?
Here's what I would say. I'm still on staff at my church too. And first of all, Casey, I want to thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And I love what you're doing. I think actually what you're doing here with this type of podcast is exactly what church leaders need. Worship people, worship leaders, whatever it might be. I think let's not get discouraged. This really is a new opportunity for us. It really is. And I know it's different. And for some people that may be difficult, but it's an opportunity for us to learn new things, learn new skills, see things different ways, learn new things about people that we didn't know before. So make sure that you're connected. If you're watching this, you're already obviously trying to get connected. Stay connected with other people who are on the journey. That's what I would say. We don't know when this is going to end. And so, don't get caught up in the, hey, I'm not going to feel great again until we've packed out the house on Sunday. That's going to be a great weekend. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there's lots of stuff that we can do to still do ministry. We're still doing ministry. We're not just in a holding pattern. We're doing ministry now, and let's be encouraged by that, and share stories with each other, but stay connected to other people who are walking through this.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Bruce, for coming on.
Absolutely.
Once again, we close things in prayer here on this podcast. And so I'm going to pray for you that God would bless your ministry and what you are doing.
Appreciate that.
And everybody who's listened to this as well. And then we will just be gone. So everybody else before that, just want to say one more time, Bruce Colbert, thank you so much for coming on, and all of the links for connecting with him, learning about CSD and everything that he can do to help with your ministry is below in the description. So let's go ahead and pray, and we will see you guys next week. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for everything that you've done through COVID. I thank you that you have been doing a lot of work in your church, in all these nations, that we've actually experienced something that I never thought I would in my lifetime, where I see the act of God affect the entire world at the same time. It's just incredible. And Father, I pray that as we see you moving in different directions here, that we would follow you, and that we wouldn't be afraid of stepping into territory that we don't know, but rather that we would step into it confidently, knowing that you are creating opportunities for your glory, for your kingdom, and that we would just go full in with that in 2021. I pray that you would just give us courage, give us excitement for your ministry, for your goals, for your path. And I pray that you would just give us courage and stamina to endure the testing that is going on right now. So, Father, we love you. I pray that you would bless Bruce and his ministry that he's still doing for you and has been for years and years. I pray that you would bless him and his family and everything that they do as they walk with you. It's in Christ's name that we pray these things, and for his sake that we pray. Amen. Thank you so much, Bruce, for coming on the podcast once again. I want to thank you for reaching out and allowing other people to reach out to you and to take your knowledge and your consulting ability and your know-how to put a budget together and to put a package together for the right situation at the right church and get them what they need to be live streaming the right way. If you are listening to this on a podcast, would you do us a big favor and give us a 5-star review and maybe a comment so we can get put up into the algorithm and actually be able to get into the ears of more and more people just like you? And if you have been listening here on YouTube, I just want to thank you again. Could you like this? Could you subscribe to this channel to support it? And comment below. That seems to be the way that they are passing videos along right now, through commenting. So comment below, even if you just say, hey, all of the other links for everything that we talked about in this podcast episode is either in the show notes or in the description, depending on which platform you have watched on. Thank you again so much for listening to this episode. We really appreciate here you helping the project. Help us out by sharing this if you would, and give us a like. May God keep you and bless you this day. See you next time.